Hi everybody, welcome back to Wholeness Campaign. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I killed my intestinal parasites. This is a bit of a lengthy story, but my goal is for you to come away with this with actionable tips to really get to the root cause of your symptoms without any of the BS of the conventional world and none of the hype and confusion that comes with the holistic space, which is often what we see. So many people assume that parasites are only a concern in developing nations. This was actually the belief that I had going into my entire healing process, and really that came from the fact that I started addressing my parasites after I had been overseas. And yes, there are certain types of parasites that are specific to less developed nations that maybe have poor sanitation quality and their water filtration systems are not really that great. But research is showing that it's actually way more common in developed nations than we might think, because we actually are exposed to parasites in our day-to-day lives as we eat food, interact with the dirt, do some gardening, and honestly, even just interacting with pets can actually expose us to parasites. I would actually argue that you could be born with parasites that are passed on from your parents, which is why my goal with my clients is never to actually avoid getting parasites in the first place. I think it's kind of a silly desire because we are in essence microbial beings. Like, we are literally made of microbes, and these microbes are there for a reason. I'm going to kind of get into that in this video. So let's talk symptoms for a minute. Symptoms of parasites can be a variety of different things, anything from acne to cancer. But let me give you like kind of a rundown of things that I think are the most common ones. And when I see these in my clients, I tend to jump to parasites being a part of the problem. Not that they are the entire problem, not even that they are the root of the problem, but that there is an overgrowth of parasitic activity, and we would want to take a look at that. Symptoms would include things like bloating, digestive issues, food sensitivities, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, even adrenal fatigue or brain fog, skin issues such as acne, eczema, and rashes, autoimmune-like symptoms, anxiety, depression, and really this comes from a variety of reasons, but parasites are stealing our nutrients, especially if there's an overgrowth of them. They are going to be taking not only our nutrient stores, but they actually feed off of our serotonin. So if you're experiencing anything along the lines of anxiety, PTSD, stress episodes, any of that, you'd be surprised how interconnected parasitic activity can be. And the reason for that is just that when they're stealing and feeding off of your serotonin, it's going to be really hard for you to actually experience that sort of like feel good state. And as we know, 95% of our serotonin levels originate in our gut microbiome. And so our gut is very integrally connected to our brain and our emotional states, our mood, and a variety of different mood disorders. So let's get into how I actually got rid of these. I'm going to post some pictures of the types of things I was seeing come out of me once I started this actual parasite cleansing, and I'll explain kind of what I did here in a second. But after traveling abroad, I was sensitive to everything, you guys. I mean, I was very sensitive before. I probably had a variety of food intolerances, several like acute allergies. But after traveling abroad, I came back and I barely could actually even tolerate water. I was so sensitive. This would cause me to run to the bathroom. I had this acute kind of like digestive upset for probably around a year before I realized like there was something wrong and I needed to go and actually get tested. And this was actually the beginning of my holistic healing journey. So I went to a conventional doctor and they did a stool sample. This is actually not something that I would recommend anymore, but they did a stool test and they actually found parasites. This doesn't always happen. This is part of why I don't recommend it, is because you can do a stool test and parasites can actually disintegrate before they get to the lab, because parasites don't survive outside of their host. And so it's actually very common for them to not show up on a stool test, or for certain species to actually not even be present by the time they actually do the tests. And so it would not be a very accurate test. And so yes, it might be able to find some, but again, it's not going to be able to find all of them. In my case, it definitely did find a couple strains. And funny enough, they found these strains that were definitely associated with my experience traveling abroad, but they were not what I actually started seeing over time as I started actually purging parasites come out of me. So the strains that I started seeing come out of me were not associated with other countries. They were ones that you can get right here in the US. They were very matured in their size. And not to be graphic, I will post a couple pictures here, but they were very matured in their size. And yes, they were the species that you would find here. You would get from food, from gardening, from being in the earth, from dogs, all of it. And very likely I actually had that before I even went abroad. And I'll kind of show you what I mean here. So here's a couple pictures of the types of parasites that I started passing. Once I really started getting to the root of my symptoms, I did start passing the variety of parasites. Don't ask why I know all these different varieties. At this point, I could probably identify at least 5 to 10 of the different types of parasites, just from experience in my own body. But yes, I did pass the type that they saw in the stool sample, and I passed many, many more types, as you can see here in the pictures. But my first attempt at actually getting rid of this, since I was kind of in the mainstream at the time, was to use antibiotics. And so I used antibiotics. I took several rounds of antibiotics actually after the fact, which did a whole number on my gut. But the type that I took specifically for the parasites, I would say actually did more damage than it did help my microbiome. I saw symptoms temporarily get better. So I remember feeling like improved levels of fatigue. My digestion got better in the sense of like I wasn't having extreme bouts of diarrhea. I wasn't having a lot of pain when I was eating. But after a period of time, I actually ended up getting much worse. And I felt my brain, my neurological symptoms were much, much harder to get rid of. And my gut related issues just kind of skyrocketed actually after a certain point. It almost felt like it got a little bit better and then it like tanked, and probably was even worse than what it was to begin with. So as much as I felt some relief in the beginning from the antibiotics, actually that relief didn't last very long. So yes, I still felt terrible. My next step was really starting to change my diet. And I saw somebody who eventually just told me that I was going to have to live like this. People often experience a post-IBS state after having a parasitic infection, and that it would be normal for me to experience this 5, 10, 15 years out. I had doctors and nurse practitioners telling me that it was just, they didn't really see people get 100% better after the antibiotics, and that this was normal, this was common, and that I should speak with a doctor to talk about some nutritional adjustments I could make to my diet that might make my life a little bit more manageable. So after I did that, I did see a doctor. She was the one who introduced me to the low FODMAP diet. I tried it, and it definitely made my symptoms worse. Didn't work, was very restrictive, but also didn't actually heal the root cause. And it wasn't until I actually committed to a gut healing protocol that I started seeing these massive benefits. And you guys, to the point where within 2 weeks, I had had no migraines, my fatigue had increased so dramatically, and I wasn't having any more digestive upset, digestive pain, bloating, any of that type of stuff with the food that I was eating. I realized that I needed to do a really integrative, deep gut healing journey, and that's kind of what led me to the GAPS diet. Now, I don't think that you always need to go as in depth as the GAPS diet is, but I do think it's a great thing if you're ready and you really want to kick your symptoms fast. I think it's honestly the best way and the fastest way to do that. But when it came to my parasites, it actually wasn't until I started doing this protocol that I started seeing parasites actually like leaving in droves and wanting to leave. I will say I don't think that the nutritional aspect was enough. It was enough to actually relieve my symptoms, but it wasn't enough to actually start seeing parasites wanting to leave. And really this comes down to the framework that I use in my whole health blueprint to help clients actually get to the root of their illness, which parasites can be at the center of a lot of different chronic symptoms. So I think that it is something worth addressing no matter what you're dealing with. But when I really started to see parasites wanting to leave was when I started to remove their food source. And this, I believe, comes in the form of heavy metals and toxins. And so it wasn't until I actually started doing some targeted detox work that my gut microbiome could really like make the final shift that it needed to before literally parasites were wanting to leave my body. And that sounds disgusting and gross, but as you saw in the pictures, like it was happening all the time. And to this day is still a part of my healing process, but now I don't experience the wild symptoms that I once did from having such a dramatic overgrowth of parasites. So for me, it's a 2-part solution, and this is what I teach my clients in the Whole Health Blueprint, is that you need to work the microbiome. You need to heal the gut lining so that your gut isn't porous, it's not leaky. using food that can strategically rebalance the gut microbiome and overpower the pathogenic populations that are just completely out of control. So you need to kind of do that rebalancing work. And the second part of this is really where the magic happens, I believe, is when you start to do the detox work. And this is not just as simple as the random cleanses that you see on the internet. Oh my goodness, you guys, stop doing those. They can be so harmful. And really the reason is that they sabotage that first step, which I think is so important, so integral to your long-term sustainable health, which is that microbiome piece. I see people all the time going ahead, cleansing, using herbs and things that actually damage the gut lining over time, actually damage the beneficial flora over time. So again, we're leaving you back in that same space of imbalance, and your immune system ends up suffering for it. And honestly, I often see maybe symptoms get better, but other ones arise, and we're looking for lasting results here. So this is why I think this is so important. We want to do detox right. And then I really think the next step is dealing with the stumbling blocks. And it's why you've been on every other protocol and gotten to the end of it and thought, I still have some symptoms. I still have like these lingering things. I still can't tolerate gluten. I still can't eat a certain amount of sugar. Like this last pillar of addressing the stumbling blocks is what actually could get you to the place of long-term and sustainable health. And the pillars, I believe, are heavy metal chelation and nervous system regulation. So these are two things that I think are maybe well overspoken in our natural, crunchy environment. But what I want to say is that I think they can be a huge blockage to actually seeing lasting results for your health. I did a whole video on the connection between heavy metals and parasites and why I think they are so interconnected and why you can't resolve one without the other. I will have that linked in the description box below. But really, this is the framework that I teach in the Whole Health Blueprint. This is why I have a 6-month program, because I really think to get to the root of your illness, you need to do all 3 steps. Like you can't leave one out. We can't just have healing without nervous system regulation. We can't just do the gut work without the detox. I think they all need to be connected. And I want to provide a streamlined approach to that, because you guys know that sitting around on Instagram and getting all your detox advice from them is just not going to work long term. And for me, I just experienced that firsthand, like a lot of just misinformation, trial and error, and that's not what I want for you. So if you are interested in getting to the root of your illness, whether that be you suspect that you have parasites or you have all these other mystery symptoms that people can't explain that actually might be connected to parasites or other toxicity in your body or gut imbalance in your body, check out the link in the description for the Whole Health Blueprint, because I take people through this holistic start to finish process in the right order. And that's really key here, is I'm taking you in it in the order that allows for you to have the foundation set and also move beyond just food restriction and the basics of gut health. Like I want to actually get you to the finish line. So the link for that is in the description. So I also want to mention here that in my personal experience passing parasites, my symptoms always improve. And what I'll find is I might experience this little like bout where I'm like feeling a little bit different or feeling maybe a little bit worse. A symptom kind of pops up, and then I realize that my gut needs a little extra layer of support, or it's actually going a layer deeper to work to heal something. And what's crazy is often what will happen within like the week is I will pass some crazy amount of parasites, a blob of parasites or one singular parasite that is very large. And then you guys, what's crazy is I'll end up feeling way better on the other end of that. And so it's cool when you can learn how to support your body in the process and use food to your advantage. And so you're not, running to all these naturopathic doctors and feeling stressed and feeling overwhelmed by all that social media has to offer. So if you want to learn about the connection between heavy metals and parasites, I will have a link for that video right here, so you can go dig into how the two are connected in your life. Thank you so much for watching.